Welcome to the show. You are in the right place. This is the first episode 1 of the Sharp Football Show. Sit back, relax. We're going to get to you some college football, some NFL, everything that you need to get prepared for the upcoming weekend of the NFL and college football slates here. Week 1 obviously kicked off last night. I got some thoughts on that game momentarily. Coming up, we're going to have some experts talking about college football, talking about the NFL, giving out some player props, some ATS picks, some totals. We've got everything for you, and I think you're going to really enjoy this show. What are you going to get moving forward here after this first episode? Well, I'm going to be back with you every single Tuesday. We're going to be dropping some analysis of all the games that were just played Monday night as well as all day Sunday. We're going to be talking about why some of the teams lost, what they could have done a little bit better, how they should be improving, some of the things that you're going to need to know for next weekend's game, for week 2 of the NFL, week 3 of college football. We're going to be dropping this info to you so early in the week. It's going to get you very prepared. I'm super excited. Naturally, it is the first week that we're going to be doing this, and so we're going to get better. So the episodes are going to get only better from here. Just like what I felt from the Baltimore Ravens and the Kansas City Chiefs last night. You know, Isaiah Likely comes out after the game and says that if this is the best the Kansas City Chiefs got, they're going to be in trouble in the postseason. That's the wrong opinion to have, Isaiah Likely. The opinion to have is that we're all going to get better. The Chiefs are going to get better too. If you think your Ravens are going to get better, guess what? So are the Kansas City Chiefs. They didn't even have Marquise Brown, who is probably going to be their 1A wide receiver. Obviously, Rashee Rice was ridiculous last night. They're going to have talented receivers there. Xavier Worthy is only going to get better. So look out for that. We've got a packed show for you here. So let's dive into some things. And I'm going to start by telling you guys, if you are watching this on X, we're obviously streaming live on X. We're going to be taking questions on both the Tuesday show and this Friday show on YouTube. So go subscribe on YouTube. Just go into YouTube and search Sharp Football Analysis, and that'll pull up the show. And you can ask your questions there, and we're going to get to some of those questions at the end. The other thing that we're going to be doing is sometimes I'm going to be giving you guys some rants, and I'm going to be doing the rant first on last night's game, but I'm going to be doing that into my phone here because we're going to be posting a lot of clips here on our Instagram page, on our YouTube Shorts, on our TikTok pages. So make sure you check the links down at the bottom. You need to be following us on all our platforms. Obviously, you're following me on Sharp Football. You're following the website handle, but you need to be following all the other guests that we bring on here, as well as our other channels on all the other platforms, Instagram, YouTube, as well as TikTok. So let's get started. I want to talk to you a little bit about the Baltimore Ravens and an issue I found with them last night. And that is this. You can't build your offense around passes thrown behind the line of scrimmage. If you've been following me, you know that I spent significant time this offseason preaching about the perils of passes behind the line of scrimmage. I said that all 32 teams have negative EPA per attempt on passes thrown behind the line of scrimmage, but all but 3 teams have positive EPA when they pass the ball beyond the line of scrimmage. And then we see the week 1 game kickoff last night, and the Baltimore Ravens first half entire game plan was built around throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage. In the first half, Lamar Jackson averaged 0.8 air yards. He didn't even throw more than 1 yard downfield on average in the first half. 56% of his attempts were backwards. They were thrown behind the line of scrimmage, not in front of the line of scrimmage. Now let's zoom out to the entire game. When Lamar Jackson threw it behind the line of scrimmage, which he did very frequently, on almost 40% of his total attempts, like 39.6% of his attempts, minus 0.59 EPA per attempt, 31% success, and 2.6 yards per attempt. But when he threw it beyond the line of scrimmage, plus 0.47 EPA per attempt, 52% success, and 9.3 yards per attempt. You know, the Ravens' last 2 games that they played were both against the Kansas City Chiefs. To lose last season and first game this season. Todd Monken's game plans in both of those games were suboptimal. If you are going to be facing the Kansas City Chiefs and you're going to be going to the Super Bowl, you're going to have to come back to Kansas City to play these guys in Kansas City. You are absolutely going to need to create a better game plan if you are Todd Monken. So you're going to need to stop throwing and wasting plays, throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage as much as you were doing. And let that be a lesson to the rest of the teams. A little bit is fine. defense obviously is making adjustments. You are going to have to be passing the ball beyond the line of scrimmage. Let's get on to a quick ad, and then we're going to get into our first guest. I want to mention to all of you guys that we are running 77% off week one on any single subscription that you want. A week one subscription, 77% off. We've got 18 plays up there right now between props, sides, totals, etc. We're going to have more. Some of these plays have done really well. We went 2-1 last night, 1-0 on our elevated play that we had. Those plays hit over 67% last year. So if you want to get involved, 77% off. Use the code week one. 77 show. The code is 77 show. I know, producer Matt, you got the wrong code up there. So the code is 77 show. Get you 77% off week one. And if you want 25% off anything on the website right now, special sale. It'll end when week one kicks off on Sunday. Week one code, the code for 25% off everything is 25 show. All right, with that being said, let's transition here. I want to talk about college football. Those are the games that we're going to see tomorrow. Now, we'll talk a little bit about tonight's game as well between the Green Bay Packers and the Philadelphia Eagles. But let's talk about week two, college football. And let's bring in our guest, Ryan McCrystal. He's been one of the most accurate mock drafters of this generation. He was great last year as well. And he shifted this season to a full-time role for us doing college football only. He was helping out with the NFL. We moved Ryan back to college football. This is his specialty. He wanted to do it. We were happy to oblige. And that allows you, Ryan, I think, to specialize a lot more. And right now you've got a game here that you want to talk about first, which is, the team that everybody's looking forward to next year. What happens with Archie Manning, the young Manning. We want to see what Arch does out there. But that's what happens when they win big. And you think they're going to have some success this game when they go ahead and take on Michigan. Now, the last time Michigan played Texas was 2005. That was Vince Young squaring off versus Chad Henne. Michigan has won 23 straight home games. This game is in Michigan, of course. They always get up for top five teams. I believe they've won 32 straight games versus top five teams in the regular season, which seems hard to believe, but I guess is a true statistic. So why do you think that the Texas Longhorns are going to break that streak tomorrow?
Yeah, clearly the marquee game of the week with Texas going to Ann Arbor. And I'm going to lay the points and take Texas in that matchup. And there's two key factors that I want to talk about. I'll start with Texas since they're the favorite. One of the big questions we've heard about this offseason is, can Quinn Ewers repeat last year's performance without Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell? Those are two big losses, as we saw just last night with Xavier Worthy doing some damage for the Chiefs. Personally, I'm not concerned because they hit the portal so hard this year. They got Isaiah Bond from Alabama, Silas Bolden, who's sort of going to be the Xavier Worthy replacement. He's not Worthy, but he's going to sort of fill that role in the offense. Got him from Oregon State, Matthew Golden from Houston, added a big-name freshman in Ryan Wingo. So, yeah, Worthy and Mitchell were big losses, but I think this year's receiving core is actually deeper. So even if you can take away one of those guys, there's very few teams that are going to be able to match up with everybody Texas can throw at you, and that includes Michigan. So flipping over to the other side now and talk about Michigan, this is really the biggest reason why I'm on Texas in that game, and it all boils down to Michigan's quarterback play. Last week against Fresno State, they named Davis Warren, a former walk-on, as their starting quarterback, and it was a surprise because we had seen Alex Orji last year a little bit. He was incorporated into the offense because of his running ability. Michigan's obviously a run-oriented team. So it made a lot of sense to use Alex Orji as a starter, just lean really heavy into the run game. It did not go well for Davis Warren. I'll throw a couple quick stats at you. Warren last week against Fresno State, 1 of 6 when throwing 10 or more yards downfield with an interception. That's brutal against a team like Fresno State. And when he was in a clean pocket, 4.7 yards per attempt. If you're a Michigan quarterback and you can't pick apart a defense like Fresno State from the pocket, you're going to have a very long day against Michigan. Now, I say if I'm leaning. I think Texas is going to win easily if Warren starts, and I want to say if because Michigan has always loved to play head games. They don't talk about injuries. They don't release depth charts. So, would anyone really be surprised if they played Davis Warren just to mess with Texas, and then they roll out Alex Orji in week 2 with a completely different run-oriented offense to take on Texas? I'm reserving a little bit of doubt in my pick just for that reason, that maybe they were messing with us. But if Warren plays, I don't think this game is competitive.
Okay, interesting. So do we want to wait on that, or do we want to just go ahead and lay the points here?
Personally, I've already taken it because I don't have a ton of confidence, even if Orgy is out there. It just raises a little bit of doubt. But I think it's totally reasonable to wait, see who comes out in the first drive, or even wait till the second drive. And, if maybe no scoring has happened and the line is pretty much the same, that would be a reasonable way to approach it also, just bet it live.
Okay, so now let's move on to NC State and Tennessee. This game is a home game for NC State, but it's at a neutral site of the Bank of America Stadium where the Carolina Panthers play. This game opened at Tennessee -7, has been bet all the way up to Tennessee -10. These squads haven't met since 2012. NC State hasn't had a lot of success playing in this venue, even though they're supposedly home games. They're 3-6 all time. They've won 3 out of 9 games in Bank of America Stadium. And I'll let you pronounce his name, but Tennessee is going to be flashing a talented redshirt quarterback last year. Obviously, lower competition this week. Last week, they started him for his first game ever. Redshirt quarterback, 313 yards, 3 touchdowns against lesser competition. He gets to step up here against NC State. What do you think about the young redshirt freshman quarterback, and what do you think about Tennessee in this game?
Yeah, I'm taking Tennessee in this game at -9.5. I think this game is really all it boils down to the quarterbacks. And like you said, Nico Iamaleava, Tennessee's quarterback, is the biggest factor here. He probably gives Tennessee the ability to revert back to the offense that they used in 2022 with Hendon Hooker when they very nearly made the playoffs that year. We know Josh Heupel runs a version of the air raid offense, but he wants to throw downfield much more aggressively than a lot of the air raid teams. So in 2022, with Hooker, a veteran quarterback they trusted a lot, they ranked 13th in downfield passing frequency. Last year with Joe Milton, even though Milton has a huge arm, no accuracy, so they dialed back the offense a lot. They ranked 99th in downfield passing frequency last year. Then last week with Iamaleava, he was 5 of 7 on throws 15 or more yards downfield. That's a lot of downfield passing against a team in Chattanooga that they did not need to be that aggressive. They could have been super vanilla and just dinked and dunked their way to a very easy win. I think the fact that we saw them throwing downfield a lot tells us that they wanted a tune-up in that game. They wanted him to sort of get his legs under him, throw downfield a lot, because they knew that they might need it against NC State. We're going to see that type of offense. Now, on the other side, Tennessee, if Iamaleava is who we think he is, they're going to put up points, and so NC State will have to match them. Now, they added Grayson McCall, a quarterback that you may have been familiar with, 4-year starter at Coastal Carolina. He's pairing with Robert Anae, their offensive coordinator, who has a history of some very aggressive passing attacks. A couple of years ago at Virginia with Brennan Armstrong as his quarterback, he put up huge numbers, threw for well over 4,000 yards. I believe he got to 30-something touchdowns. He has the offense. He has the playbook to keep pace with Tennessee, but does he have the quarterback? I don't know, because McCall excelled in Jamie Chadwell's offense at Coastal Carolina his first couple of years. But then Chadwell left for Liberty last year. McCall took a step back. Now, yes, he did get injured late in the year, but he was not the same quarterback early on. So if we take a look at McCall's on-target rates at 10 or more yards downfield, 2020, 73%, 2021, 75%, 2022, 70%. Then in 2023, last year without Chadwell, 49%. Last week against Western Carolina, an FCS school that gave them a tough game, it was 53%. So I have questions that was McCall just a product of working with a very innovative coach in Jamie Chadwell, who's one of the rising stars in the coaching ranks in college football? I think that might be the case. And so I'm buying Tennessee's quarterback, Iamaleava, not so much buying McCall. And I think Tennessee probably puts up a big number and wins pretty easily.
Excellent. Well, another prop related to that quarterback that we are going to be getting on here momentarily, the over in the rushing yards for him this week. I know that one of our experts loves that prop a lot. What do you think about his rushing yards over in this game? 33.5 right now.
Yeah, I think it's plausible because we are expecting him to drop back to pass a lot. I don't think they're going to have a lot of designed runs for him, but if he's dropping back to pass a lot and wants to throw downfield, he gets a decent defense in NC State. He's probably going to be flushed out of the pocket a few times, and he's athletic enough to take off running. So he doesn't need a huge volume. If he just gets 3 or 4 scrambles, that seems like an attainable number for him.
Okay, excellent. Now, I know there's another prop that you like in particular in another game. Running back Jaydon Blue, we talked about this game previously. Why don't you lay it out for us, what you like about this Texas running back and why you think he's going to have some success here?
Yeah, going back to that Texas-Michigan matchup, I like the over on Jaydon Blue's receptions up to 3.5. Haven't seen a line on this yet, but I would take the over up to 3.5. He's Texas's running back filling in for the injured CJ Baxter, who unfortunately was lost for the year. And I think this bet makes a lot of sense because the one area where Michigan definitely does have an advantage against Texas is in the run game. Michigan returns a lot of their interior defenders. They should have a very good run defense again this year. Really not expecting much of a drop off from that championship team a year ago. So if Michigan is going to be able to slow down the run a little bit, an obvious pivot is to just use a little bit more of the short passing game, which Steve Sarkisian does very effectively. He likes to get his running backs involved regardless of the situation. So to pivot to more of that in this type of game, I think it makes sense. And I think Texas may have also tipped their hand a little bit in this way last week because Jaydon Blue, again, in a very easy win against Colorado State where they didn't really need him on the field that much, he had 3 catches on 5 targets. So to have your starting running back that heavily involved in the passing game where none of it was necessary, you did not need to use him in that way. It felt like another tune-up type situation where they were like, all right, young guy, we got to get you some experience. Let's get you comfortable catching the ball out of the backfield because we're going to need it next week against Michigan. So I think that tipped their hand a little bit and should make us feel pretty good taking the over on his receptions.
All right, excellent stuff. This is Ryan McCrystal. You guys are going to be able to catch him sharing some of his college football best bets every single Friday on this show with us. And of course, he's writing over at sharpfootballanalysis.com, and he's got more picks up there in different articles. So head over to sharpfootballanalysis.com. Check him out. Excellent job, Ryan. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you next Friday.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. Okay, so now let's pivot a little bit. Let's get back into the NFL. I'm going to be talking about the Miami Dolphins here. We're going to go back to the social cam. One of the things you have to do when you're handicapping these games this year is factor in the elements. You know, in Miami, the elements are going to be a little bit colder, right? Sorry, in Miami, the elements are going to be a little bit hotter. In Buffalo, we got some wind, 14-mile-per-hour wind, gust of 31 potentially for this game. But you really have to focus on the heat down in Miami. Earlier this week, I was looking harder at the Jacksonville Jaguars, but as the weather forecast evolved, my stance sort of softened. Miami is 20-3 straight up, 18-5 ATS at home with Tua when the temp is 75 degrees or warmer, which it's going to be. They have a much more disastrous record in all of their other games. Now let's look at just Tua with Mike McDaniel. Miami's played in 8 home games in the first 8 weeks of the season, the last 2 years with Mike McDaniel as their head coach play caller. One of those games, Tua missed. Teddy Bridgewater, Skylar Thompson were playing. Obviously, remove that from the sample. Their other 7 games, 7-0 straight up, 6-1 ATS. They're averaging 33 points per game. Opposing offenses, they struggled to keep up in these games. And I found it really interesting to know that these offenses are the ones that are gassing out late in games. If you look at all Miami Dolphins home games with Mike McDaniel and Tua with a temp of 75 plus, 12-0, winning by 16 points per game. The Dolphins offense starts out on fire in these games. They get out early, but then in the sweltering heat, because the opposing teams are standing on the opposite sideline in the sun, those offenses are averaging only 6.6 points scored in the second half of games. They're not even averaging 15 points scored in the entirety of the game. So from this perspective, I am not a Jaguars fan. I was looking to back the Jaguars potentially because of several factors that are going to be playing into this game. I mean, the Miami Dolphins, they're beat up on defense. I don't think they're going to be able to get pressure on Trevor Lawrence very well. That's one of the biggest issues with Trevor Lawrence. I don't know why. He's a prototypical quarterback. He should be able to stand in the pocket and deliver. He's got a great head coach in Doug Peterson calling plays for him. They should be able to have some success throwing the football down the field. He should be able to stand in there and deal with a little bit of pressure, figure out where to get the football. He also is great with his legs. He's very mobile. Should it be an issue? But Trevor Lawrence struggles tremendously when he gets put under pressure. The Miami Dolphins edge rushers aren't there this season. They're a little bit beat up right now. They'll get a little bit healthier later on in the season with Phillips back, but that's not the case right now. And then you got some injuries in the secondary. Has me concerned as to whether or not this Miami defense is going to be able to really take over this game like they've done in some of these other games that I'm sharing. But that being said, I've cooled on the love for the Jacksonville Jaguars in week 1 as this temperature has risen and the cloud cover has lessened. It looks like it's going to be bright and sunny down there. And that's just such a big advantage as these statistics show and some of the trends. So I'm not betting on the Miami Dolphins, but I want to say this season we are going to be covering a lot. It's a Friday afternoon show. We're going to be covering a lot about temperature, weather, wind specifically, and we're going to get you all the latest forecasts so that you can make some decisions here on a Friday afternoon as you're looking to bet these games headed into the weekend. But this is one that it's not necessarily prompting a bet, but it's definitely having me cool on a bet. So with that said, let's get on to some more NFL bets. And we're going to talk now to, excuse me about that. We're going to talk now to Pam Maldonado. Now, Pam is new with us here at Sharp Football Analysis in 2024. She's joining us. She has a lot of background in writing about the NFL. And so I'm excited to see what she's going to bring to the table here for us this week. Let's dive into it, Pam. Mm-hmm. We've got your eye on a rookie quarterback making a trip to South Florida himself. Not South Florida, but Florida. And we got to keep an eye on the weather because this is another game where there's potential weather situation, and that is in Tampa, where we've got a chance of a thunderstorm, not much wind, but chance of a thunderstorm. Now, keep in mind, the one thing I will say about thunderstorms this time of year, Pam, we saw it in the game last night. When the thunderstorms roll through, they'll just delay the game. So like that's a unique situation where that's not going to necessarily, if it's just rain, that could factor in. If it starts downpouring and there's no thunder, lightning, etc., that's going to reduce scoring. But as long as this is a thunderstorm with thunder and lightning as part of it, they're just going to delay the game. They're going to wait for it to pass through, and then we're going to be able to play it again. So keep that in mind as you're handicapping this one as well. But I know all of the DMV area is hoping that you're going to be right on this with Jayden Daniels having some success. You don't think he's just going to have success overall this season. You actually think that this week one game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may be his coming out party. So talk to us a little bit about why you like why you like the Washington Commanders in this game.
I love the Commanders at +3, but I also like them on the money line, but I'm being conservative because you mentioned it. It is the Jayden Daniels factor. He is a rookie sensation, and I believe in him so much that he could gel with this offense. Second overall pick last year. I believe he is the real deal because we are looking at a true dual threat quarterback who can not just light it up with his arm, but really take off with his legs. And we saw a really good depiction of that last night with Lamar Jackson. I think he could be Lamar Jackson 2.0. And that's going to be such a nightmare for the Bucs front seven, which, by the way, is ranked a dismal 28th coming into the season. That's the X factor number one. But I'm also looking at Dan Quinn's defensive edge here. I'm feeling really good about Dan Quinn with this defense going up against a Baker Mayfield who is coming off a career season for him. Obvious regression could be in the way. Mix that in with Dan Quinn having a solid track record, which speaks for itself, and Mayfield's inconsistencies could play right into Quinn's hands. But I'm also thinking that the pass rush is really going to play a huge part here. That's where things can really get interesting for me. The Bucs pass rush is, let's just say it, not really striking fear into anybody's heart right now. So I think that's going to be a huge advantage for Daniels, not only as a rookie quarterback, but for any quarterback. He might find himself with all day in the pocket, giving him time to make reads, find open receivers. And remember, this is his NFL debut. So there's no pro game film on him. And the Bucs are going in blind, and that's a huge advantage for the rookie. But you've also got a two-back system starting with Austin Eckler. And they can really utilize that system up their sleeve. He's not just a runner, but he's a receiving threat out in the backfield. And that's really going up against a Bucs rushing defense that ranked 30th in grade last season. Already that's a mismatch if I've ever seen one. Tie that in with combination in Brian Robinson Jr., pair him with Eckler. And I think that's a really strong backfield that can keep the defense guessing. Mixed in with Daniels, I really do have a lot of conviction that the bottom line is that this offense can really click and surprise early on.
So you also, Pam, like Jayden Daniels rushing yards, which I don't disagree with one bit. I've got him on the over for season long. By the way, some of these quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson ran for 122 yards last night. We took him on the season long over. His season long over prop was 675. He already is almost about 20% there in just one out of his 17 games this season. So as long as he stays healthy, that's looking like a smash. I can't believe, Pam, that there were people that were talking about Lamar Jackson losing weight as like a problem for Lamar Jackson. It's going to be an issue. He certainly feels a lot more confident. I got some gripes about Todd Monk, and I talked about that a little bit at the beginning of the show and the way that they're strategizing offensively, but certainly Lamar's wheels are going to be a lot of fun. You like a prop here related to Jayden Daniels' wheels as well.
I do. I think anytime touchdown at plus 195, you're giving me plus money for the dual threat phenom right now. If you just look at what he did in college, yes, he's that dual threat quarterback that we know, but he averaged 8.5 yards per carry. How is that going to differ just because now he's in the NFL? And he racked up 22 rushing touchdowns in just his 2 years at LSU. These numbers speak for themselves, and I believe that's going to carry on into the new season in the NFL because of Cliff Kingsbury. He's the new offensive coordinator, and he's known for squeezing every ounce of potential out of mobile quarterbacks. His playbook is in full of designed quarterback runs, read options, spread formations, creates running lanes. He's not afraid to let his quarterbacks improvise when the plays break down. That alone is a match made in heaven for Daniels, and punching one in at plus 195, almost 2-1, that for me like screams value.
All right, so now there's another game that you think has some value as well. It's a rival to the Washington Commanders, and actually they're linked because it's Dan Quinn's old team. Dan Quinn, former defensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys, goes to DC, takes over as head coach. I'm interested to see how that defense looks there that he's building. Sometimes these take a little while to develop and fully mature, so I'm interested to see how the Washington Commanders defense comes out the gates week 1 against the new Lee and Cohn offense of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But you got the Dallas Cowboys going up to take on Deshaun Watson. And that's another question mark, a massive question mark that we have is what are we going to get out of Deshaun Watson this year? Because the only thing that we've gotten out of him is pretty much memes and jokes about his salary and his salary cap hit and everything like that. But we really haven't gotten a lot of production out of Deshaun Watson. I know the Browns record is like 5-1 in the games that he has started. But we have to realize that this is because of the defense, not what Deshaun Watson is doing. Their defense is obviously incredible. But do you think that the Dallas Cowboys have a really good shot to go into Cleveland and cover this spread and potentially pull out an upset, I'm sure?
Well, the Browns' record is also in correlation by having running back Nick Chubb, who's no longer in the mix. So, yeah, I like the Dallas Cowboys, and it starts at ends with the Chubb factor for me. He's on the reserve PUP list, which means he's going to miss at least the first 4 games of the season. This is such a huge blow to the ground game for the Browns because he's not just good, he's so elite. And he's in a category all on his own. We're talking about a guy who averages almost 5.5 yards per carry over his career. And that's second to only Jamal Charles in the Super Bowl era. They do have Jerome Ford. He's going to step into the spotlight here, but he's pretty good. He's averaging 4 yards per carry last season, but that is just such a big drop-off from Chubb's 6.1 yards per carry production before he got injured. And now you were talking about Deshaun Watson. If the run game isn't there, then all eyes are going to turn to Watson. And since he's been with the Browns, I mean, let's just say it. He's been inconsistent at best. He's only played 12 games due to either suspension or injury. And his stats, they're not good. He's inconsistent. He's had 9 interceptions, more turnover-worthy plays than big-time throws. Is there possible progression that can be made from the offseason? Absolutely, but I need to see it proven first because now you're going up against one of the best defenses in the Cowboys, and it's not just the Cowboys defense, it's specifically Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. That secondary is elite, projected to be the 5th best this season. I'm really looking forward to that matchup because I think Parsons can absolutely feast on Watson, who's just given us everything below level than what we're used to seeing him in years past.
Yeah, now I want to pivot real quick into a prop that you like. You already gave us the Jayden Daniels anytime touchdown. A guy that also has given us a little bit less than what we would have hoped for has been Trevor Lawrence. You know, Trevor Lawrence was the golden boy, the prodigal quarterback who was supposed to really make over the position and just another prototypical guy. We talked about him before in this very show where he should be better under pressure than he has been. He's really struggled under pressure in his career. And with an offensive coordinator and play caller like Doug Peterson as his head coach, and this is a great offensive system that he brings to Jacksonville, I'm just surprised that they don't have more answers for Trevor Lawrence. Now, don't get me wrong, he lost a ton of EPA on dropped passes and other receiver errors last season. I think they're going to get that back. I think they are going to be a more explosive offense overall in 2024. But talk to us a little bit about a prop that you like on Trevor Lawrence and you're fading him in this regard.
Let's go ahead and start with I am a Jags fan. Look. So this
There
is
you go.
me being entirely objective, which is very difficult to do when you're an analyst, but that tells you that, yes, I'm not really a big believer in Trevor Lawrence right now as a quarterback. I've been riding with him since his college days, and I just haven't seen it come to fruition. His turnover history is very concerning for me as not just a fan, but as a bettor. He threw 14 interceptions last season and led the league with 17 in his rookie year. Now, you can say that comes from injuries. You could say that he had a bad coach, but at some point in his career, that's multiple seasons, that's a hefty 2.2 interception rate. At some point, you have to say, when do we stop giving him the benefit of the doubt? And I'm already kind of right there with him. I'm teeter-tottering between that line. He has that gunslinger mentality, and that's a double-edged sword. Can he make big plays? Absolutely. But come big plays, also come big risk. And now he lost his top target with Calvin Ridley. That's a rhythm disruptor right there. And let's not forget that Miami secondary, projected to be the third best in the league entering the season, that is a significant jump from last year. Add in that the first game jitters of Jacksonville, coming out from injury-prone season, first game, potential turnovers. The bottom line is minus 140. I believe even though it is heavily juiced, there's value on him throwing at least one interception because the odds are against him for keeping a clean sheet.
There you go. So that is bold, betting against the starting quarterback for your favorite team. But obviously, we care more about the money, and what we're rooting for each week is going to be to cash the bets rather than the teams that we like to support. So let's hope for your sake that Trevor Lawrence does throw at least one pick. Pam is going to be joining us every single week as well on the show, and she's writing up articles covering the NFL, all aspects of it, player props, obviously sides and totals over at sharpfootballanalysis.com. Her work is going to come up there multiple times throughout the week. So make sure that you are checking her out over at sharpfootballanalysis.com. Excellent job, Pam. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, now's the time that we're going to be digging into some of your questions. So let's pop them up here. I'll go through a few of them. And the way that you guys can just as a reminder, the way that you guys can get your questions in is you've got to be subscribed and following over on YouTube, because I'm not checking the Twitter feed as we're doing the show. You've got to be up on YouTube, and you can submit all of your questions in the live stream there. So Sharp Football Analysis is the YouTube channel. Go ahead and follow over there. We'll get to some of your questions. Then I'm going to get some bets of mine out there to you as well shortly. So I'll call him up here, producer Matt. We got a couple of guys. It looks like Kevins is asking, how do we feel about tonight's game? And there was somebody else further down on this sheet that was also asking about tonight's game. George Rodriguez asks, can the Packers keep up with the Eagles tonight? So many questions about the Eagles offense. Yeah, there are a lot of questions about the Eagles offense, but to me, there's a lot of answers with the Eagles offense that I think Kellen Moore is going to give to quarterback Jalen Hurts that Brian Johnson, their OC from 2023, was not giving. I love the fact that I'm expecting the Philadelphia Eagles to have a little bit more tempo in this game. To me, tempo helps an offense a ton. Get to the line of scrimmage quickly, potentially limit the opposing team's ability to substitute as freely, to communicate before the snap, to get set into the proper defense, but give you the ability on offense to be able to control the personnel that you have out on the field, the matchups that you have out on the field, and then motion. You have enough time to motion or adjust your play call or your protection scheme to what the defense is giving you. I don't think they were doing that very much at all last season. They had one of the lowest motion rates in the NFL. They had one of the lower paces in the NFL. So I'm super excited to see them increase their pace tonight. I think the offense is going to be just fine, as fine as it could be in Brazil, which is a big question mark. Like, what are we going to get from both of these teams in Brazil? But I absolutely think that this offense is going to be successful. Now, I do think that the Green Bay Packers have some upside at attacking this Eagles secondary. There's a reason that the total is as high as it is. The Eagles secondary is in transition. And the biggest element that I want you guys to focus on as it relates to this game is just the fact that we've got two new defensive coordinators here trying to implement their systems in the same game with offenses that have the same quarterbacks, the same skill players. You know, obviously Jason Kelce is new along the offensive line, but relatively consistent O-lines and protection schemes. We do have Kellen Moore, but I think that's an upgrade for the Philadelphia Eagles. So I'm excited to see how these two offenses look against their counterparts defensively, but I think it's going to be another great game. I think it's going to be an excellent game, just like we saw last night. The big factor here for this game that I'm going to start to be wondering about is what's going on with these ridiculous illegal formation calls on these offensive lines. And this seems like this is going to now continue throughout the course of this week 1. I mean, they really tried to set an example last night, calling it frequently against the Baltimore Ravens. Keep in mind, the Chiefs won the toss. The Chiefs deferred. They kicked off. Baltimore gets the ball. And I think on that first drive, we had a warning and maybe 2 or 3 penalties on the Baltimore Ravens offensive linemen. Now, the Eagles are aware of it now. The Packers are aware of it now. But just because they're not getting flagged for those penalties does not mean that this is an even match. What it means is that those tackles now have to line up a little bit differently than they might have been able to line up last year. And it's always in their head. And those defensive ends that are getting more and more athletic every single year now have the opportunity to get better jumps. So I'm really curious to see how this is going to play out later on this season and the rest of week 1 here. Let's go to let's see here. Let's go to Caleb Boggs. He asks, what do you think about Anthony Richardson against the Texans? I thought what you got from Anthony Richardson earlier this offseason, in the preseason, was not the offense that Shane Steichen is going to be rolling out here. They were intentionally limiting Anthony Richardson from running the football. And I think the biggest issue with the Houston Texans as a whole, offensive line is a little bit better. Receiving core is better. CJ Stroud is a stud. Secondary is great. Stingley is awesome. It's that run stop unit on that defense. And that's the strength of the Indianapolis Colts with a healthy running back core and Anthony Richardson and all the read option that they can implement. I'm really interested to see how they come out with a run first mentality against the Houston Texans defense. I'm worried. I'll just say boldly, like, I am worried about Anthony Richardson as a passer right now. I think he's highly erratic. We tweeted out some numbers before. I don't have them on the tip of my tongue, but his completion rate to wide receivers has been abysmal. We took under receptions for Michael Pittman. That's a prop you could probably still get because their game hasn't started yet, but for the full season, under receptions for Michael Pittman, because there's just a lot of concerns about how efficient Anthony Richardson is going to be as a quarterback and passing the football. He did not have a lot of success doing that last season. Now, their games were high scoring, their games were exciting, but they weren't winning the games that he was playing. And so I'm really interested to see. I love Shane Steichen, though. So Shane Steichen is the X factor. He builds up the Colts, in my opinion. But I am worried about what Anthony Richardson as a passer is going to bring to the table. And the name of the game is you have to be able to pass the football. Let's see. George Rodriguez, I think we answered one of your questions earlier, but you got, are the Rams going to struggle against the Lions considering the state of the defense? I'm going to get to that in a second. How are we on time here? We got plenty of time. Let's get through a couple more of these. Dylan was asking if the Houston Indy game is a trap or the easiest bet. I would be hesitant to lay the points on the Houston Texans here. I haven't gotten around to taking the points on Indy. We'll see what happens if this line moves a little bit, but I absolutely, although I love CJ Stroud, and I think that they're going to have some success throwing the ball against the secondary of the Indianapolis Colts, which is one of their weak points. I have not gotten around to that. Frankie just asked thoughts on Seattle. Love Seattle. Seattle is one of the teams that I was going to try to fit them in here. And guys, this show is going to evolve, but we're always going to have a little bit of college football talk. Then we're going to have a little bit of NFL talk with some experts. And then we're going to get into some of the bets that I like and some of my opinions. I wanted to try to fit in a little bit of Seattle Seahawks talk. I wanted to fit in a little bit of JSN talk. I didn't get a chance to do that, but I absolutely think that thanks to the question, Seattle is in a great position moving forward. You know, Geno Smith is very underrated. I don't want to hear the talk about Dave Canales leaving, and so Geno's not going to look good. Geno didn't look good last year because the team was still operating an antiquated offense, in my opinion. They had a poor philosophy, and they weren't figuring out how to use JSN, and Tyler Lockett's getting a little bit older. And I just didn't like what they were doing offensively that much. I think Geno is going to be just fine this season. I think over 7.5 is a great futures bet on the Seattle Seahawks. I also took a little bit of a long shot bet on them to make the playoffs. Obviously, I don't think that that's likely, but that's why the price is set as it is. And I took a stab at that one. I think the Seattle Seahawks are going to be fun. I can't wait to see what Mike McDonald does to overhaul this defense. Once again, be careful about the expectations of a defensive coordinator in his very first game or two. I think these guys, they need the full 11 on 11 for 60 minutes and come back to the film room and break it all down and make their adjustments. And week 2, 3, I think these defenses get a lot better with these new DCs than they do right out the gates in week 1. But all of that being said, like I of course like Seattle here. I think that they should be able to get a victory here, although this is not a team that I was using in Survivor. That being said, we are running a Survivor contest. If you go to our Splash Sports we're doing a Survivor contest there. $50 entry fee to win up to $45,000 based on the number of signups. You can go check that out if you're interested in. Let's see here. Well, Dylan's just bombing these questions. What time is it here? We got a couple more minutes. I'll go ahead and do a couple of more questions here. You guys get your questions in, or Dylan's going to be asking them all. Let's get another one from George. George, you asked one. Cowboys offense seems weak with Lamb being the only legit weapon. Agree. I will be talking about the Dallas Cowboys offense momentarily when I get to one of my favorite bets on the board. But let's just say this. Dallas Cowboys are probably not going to get a whole lot out of their run game this season, in my opinion. I don't think their offensive line. I love the trajectory of that offensive line. Like, I think that they drafted well, but I am worried about their ability to just come out the gates and have a elite run blocking road grader type offensive line, especially going up against Cleveland Browns in week 1. So I think CeeDee Lamb's going to get a ton of targets. I think Dak Prescott is going to be dropping back and throwing the ball a ton. The season's going to come down to whether or not Dak Prescott can stay healthy and deliver like an MVP caliber season. If they can do both of if he can stay healthy and deliver an MVP caliber season, Dallas Cowboys are in the playoffs, certainly competing for the NFC East. I personally think that the Philadelphia Eagles have a clear path, clear road to that 1 seed in the NFC East. I think Dallas is a slight step below them. But I'm banking against Dak having an MVP caliber season. There's a lot of, and Jerry Jones talking about this all-in stuff and then not delivering, obviously a disaster. Any props that stand out to you on tonight's game? Look, I'm going to, that's from Chris. I will, Chris, be giving out a prop, probably 2 props actually, to subscribers. So that reminds me, we went 2-1 last night. We got like 18 more bets, including props. We were like 67% on our elevated props. I think we have like 8 of those or 9 of those already for Sunday's games. I highly recommend use the code 77SHOW, 77SHOW. You'll get 77% off a week 1 package. Drops the price down to like, a nice pizza, and check it out. See what you think. See if you want to continue. But just jump on board for week 1 at 77% off. It's like a no-brainer thought. I'll be giving away a couple of props for tonight's game to subscribers once I get off the show. So that's number 1. Number 2, if you want to get in on the whole season, that's your best deal, monthly or season long. Use 25 show. Get you 25% off everything. And we've got some excellent content there. We've got previews of every single game. I cannot recommend enough. Rich Rebar, our fantasy analyst, he also does these previews that work for betting and fantasy on Tuesdays for the next week's games. And they're the most in-depth previews that you're going to be able to find. Several of them are unlocked. You can go to the website right now. Check out the preview for tonight's game. You want to know about some props and you don't want to pay any money? Here, I'll give you a shortcut. Go to the sharpfootballanalysis.com. There's an in-depth article breaking down the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Green Bay Packers for tonight's game. You can check it out for free. See what you think about that. If you want that type of analysis for every single game, this entire season, every single week, this entire season, talking about every single player in the game, their matchups, their edges, go to Sharp Football Analysis, get the week 1 subscription and just roll it over. Buy a full season. We got some great deals going on right now. Let's see. Let's do one more here. Okay, Jacob, I'll get you in, and then I got another little rant to go to. Do you think Daniel Jones' surgically repaired knee is a limiting factor against a blitz-heavy Vikings defense? I don't know that that's going to be an issue. I have been encouraged by what I've heard come out of Brian Daboll and this New York Giants staff about what they think that they're going to get from Daniel Jones, but it's still a massive question mark. Daniel Jones struggles mightily, even recognizing pressure. Like, before the pressure comes, what is he going to do with that pressure? This team in the New York Giants, they want to try to push the ball a little bit down the field, but the big concern is they weren't doing that in 2022. In 2022, the way that Brian Daboll came in here and won games and got this team to win a lot of close games and got the team to make the playoffs for the first time in decades and got the team to win a playoff game was because they were getting the ball out of Daniel Jones' hands. So it was basically like, Daniel Jones can't F us up. Daniel Jones can't mess it up. We're going to throw the ball short underneath. Then we're going to work the run game. We're going to use Daniel Jones' legs. We're going to get into the red zone. We're going to run our backs. That's what they were doing in the 2022 season. Now it looks like they want to drop back to pass a little bit more. And keep in mind, one of the reasons that they're going with that short passing approach in 2022 is because Daniel Jones in like 2020, 2021, he was fumbling the ball all over the place. Like, he was a turnover machine in the pocket. He was taking sacks. He was fumbling the ball. Their O-line is a little bit better, but how is he going to do when the defense is blitzing, like we know that Brian Flores is prone to do, and they're asking Daniel Jones to try to push the ball deeper down the field? That's a huge question mark. And that matchup alone, in my opinion, determines the entire week 1 game. A lot of money has come in on the Minnesota Vikings, pushed them to a road favorite in New York week 1. They're laying, I think, 1.5 now. That's the matchup. If Brian Daboll and Daniel Jones could figure it out and get the ball out of Daniel Jones' hands deep enough down the field like they want to do, but without taking those negative sacks and fumbles in the pocket, then the Giants are pulling the upset. No doubt in my mind, the Giants are pulling the upset. But that is a big question mark. That's a big roll of the dice. So, guys, we're going to be doing this, especially on the Tuesday show. The Tuesday show is going to be awesome because I'm just going to be ranting with you one-on-one. We might have guests here and there. I'm going to be going over a lot of the takeaways from week 1's games, some things I think need to change, and then we're going to get to a lot of your questions. So highly recommend you tune into that. I do want to talk, I hinted about it earlier, I do want to talk about this Sunday night football game. So let's get into this Sunday night football game. I'll go back to the social cam. Once again, you need to be following us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube for the shorts. We're going to be posting a lot of these, but I want to talk about the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions played the Rams in the playoffs last year. And actually the Rams held David Montgomery to 4.1 yards per carry and Jahmyr Gibbs to only 32 yards on 8 rushing attempts. How did they accomplish that feat? Manpower. They sold out massively to stop the run. They overplayed the run to force Jared Goff to beat them through the air. Check out these stats. 7+ box defenders versus the NFL average for the Rams was to use 7+ box defenders on 39% of their snaps and on 59% of their run plays. But versus the Detroit Lions, they used 7+ box defenders on 55% of snaps and 76% of run plays. A massive difference. Let's look at just at first downs. On first downs alone, versus the rest of the NFL in all their other games, the Rams used 48% 7+ box defenders on all snaps. And on run plays, they were using 7+ box defenders on 60%. But versus the Lions in that playoff game, they upped that all the way to 70% on all snaps and 81% on run plays. So they sold out to stop the run. They had success. They did stop the run, but Jared Goff had one of his most efficient passing days on the season. He averaged 0.46 EPA per attempt. That was tied for the best day of the year. His 10.9 yards per attempt was his best day of the season. His 82% completion rate was the best day on the season. 52% of his pass attempts gained 10+ yards. That was his best on the season. 22% of his attempts gave 15+ yards as well. Their number 2 receiver that year was Josh Reynolds. He was heavily utilized. He got 5 of 7 targets for 80 yards. But Josh Reynolds is now in Denver catching passes. So in his place steps the first-round pick from 2022, Jameson Williams. In that game last year, Williams was only targeted twice. He caught them both. But now he's shifting into that number 2 role. I'm really intrigued to see what ends up happening here with the Rams defense. They are down 2 key players, Aaron Donald and their middle linebacker. Those 2 players are going to create a massive void, in my opinion. As much as we might love the defensive tackle, Kobe, who replaces Aaron, that is not going to give you the same results or production. And then I think we have a massive drop-off at the linebacker position. So I think that the Lions are going to have a little bit more success running the football, but now they know the jig is up. They know what is going to be happening as it relates to the strategy defensively for the Rams. They're going to probably try to stop the run once again, and Jared Goff's going to have the opportunity to throw the ball down the field again. As a result, I was all over some of the Jameson Williams props. I think Jameson Williams is going to have an outstanding game in this one. I looked at some of his ladders on some of his props. I'm really fascinated to see that. I want to see Jahmyr Gibbs. How does Jahmyr Gibbs come out with that hamstring? We don't want him to re-injure it, but he needs to be a factor here. You guys probably know through some of my content this offseason, I'm long Detroit Lions this year. I think the Detroit Lions are going to have a fabulous season. What I'm really intrigued by is how that defense looks. How does the defense improve? Because the Detroit Lions brought in their number 1 and number 2 draft picks they used on cornerbacks. They brought in cornerbacks via free agency. They knew that their biggest issue was that pass defense. And I believe, but I don't know if this is going to result in the field from a coaching perspective, I believe they need to blitz a little bit less. Because when they were blitzing last year, they ranked dead last in defensive efficiency. Dead last. They were the worst defense in the NFL when they blitzed. But you know what they ranked when they didn't blitz? When the quarterback dropped back to pass? If they did not send extra pass rushers, just 4 standard pass rushers, they were the 9th best defense in EPA per attempt. And they ranked number 5, I think top 5 in pressure rate when they didn't blitz. So they're still getting pressure at one of the highest rates of the NFL. And they're a 9th best pass defense when they didn't blitz. But they just love to blitz. They love to blitz. So they're going to be better from a personnel perspective. They've got new players there. But I just think they need to tone it down a little bit. Great test week 1 against Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua. Obviously, Puka wasn't 100% earlier. Let's see how he's able to perform out there. But offensive line question marks for the Rams as well entering this game. I think the Lions can come out early and lay it on them. And then the key is after that, their pass defense historically has been so bad that teams are just always in the game. Because the Lions are great at stopping the run, so they stop the run. But when the Lions are up by 10 points in the third quarter, opposing offenses don't give a crap about trying to run the football. All they want to do is pass. And when you rank dead last in passing defense because you're blitzing a bunch, then the opposing team just has a ton of success scoring. And that's why all these Lions games last year were so close, even though the Lions were one of the better offenses in the league and one of the higher scoring offenses in the league. So they just need to tone down some of that blitzing. And I'm interested to see what happens in the second half of this game. Okay. Now I want to get into a quick segment here for you guys that I'm going to call the longest reward. I'm going to do this every single week. So I've been dropping bets that I like all throughout the show. So you got to tune into the whole show. But the longest reward is you stuck around the longest to the end of the show. I'm going to reward you with a couple of some of my favorite props, which are longest market props, longest completion, longest rush, longest catch, those types of props, overs, unders. I like that market in general. I think it's a lot of fun to bet, and I have a lot of success betting it. Let me give you 2 bets for week 1. The first one is another rookie quarterback, Bo Nix. I think Bo Nix is going to mesh really well with Sean Payton. But when I was watching him in the preseason, I'm thinking of going up against Mike McDonald's defense. I think that this is going to be the same as what we saw in his second preseason start. Quick time to throw, a lot of underneath passes. He averaged in the preseason in both starts 2.67 seconds to throw, 6.1 air yards per attempt. And in those games, his longest completion one was 22 yards, one was 23 yards. Now, he didn't throw as many attempts. He didn't play the whole game. They weren't unveiling the entire offense, but they were playing against second and third string defensive teams that weren't game planning whatsoever for this offense. This is not going to be Russell Wilson chucking moonballs down the field to Cortland Sutton. There's also a Seahawks secondary that is really good at the perimeter to try to defend some of those with some lengthy cornerbacks, some guys that can run with players like Cortland Sutton. For these reasons, I like the under longest completion for Bo Nix. Right now, that's at 32.5 yards. It was 33.5 when I took my first nibble on it. It's at 32.5 right now, I believe. I like under Bo Nix longest completion, 32.5 yards. Another one I'll just throw in there because I talked about coming back to this game. Ezekiel Elliott's longest rushing attempt under 11.5 yards. this was a bet that we were making a lot last season. I don't want to say on a weekly basis, but the only difference was Zeke was the bell cow back for the New England Patriots for a lot of last season. He didn't have any success. That's why this bet was a great one to make. Made some decent money off of it. But this year, he's now the backup to Rico Dowdle. I think just by giving Zeke deference, they put him as the starter on the depth chart, I believe. But I don't think that Zeke is actually going to be playing starter's role throughout this season. I think Rico Dowdle probably in camp was the better running back, was more explosive. He's obviously younger. Zeke's going to be used in goal line. He could help the Dallas Cowboys in short yardage, which was a big problem for them last season. But there's a reason that everybody, myself included, was clamoring for Tony Pollard to take over the role from Zeke in that 2022 season, because Zeke was not explosive. He's not getting through the holes quickly enough. And so now we're going 2 years later and we're thinking that Zeke is going to have success against the Cleveland Browns. I don't think they're going to have a lot of rushing attempts per se. And I certainly don't think Zeke's going to break one. So under 11.5 rushing yard, longest rushing attempt for Ezekiel Elliott is up on the board. I highly suggest that you make that bet as well. So look, for the introductory show, we've went almost an hour here. Thank you guys for joining. This show is going to get better. A few hiccups. I'm not really as accustomed to hosting the full show as you guys have been following me around from some of my other stops. I've been more the analyst seat. Now I'm transitioning into the host chair. I'll get better. Trust me. I'm really looking forward to this show. This is now my baby. I cannot wait to deliver this show to you every single Friday afternoon. Make this your lunchtime viewing if you're on the East Coast from noon until like 12:45 usually Eastern time. I think you guys are going to love this show. We're going to be delivering bets all throughout that I think are going to have a lot of success. And then Tuesday is a show I can't wait to share with you guys, because that's the show where I'm going to open your eyes to some things that you didn't see over the weekend that none of the other networks were necessarily talking about, but that I've got some great data to share. And we're already going to start looking at early lines for the upcoming week for the NFL slate. So we're going to be talking about some schedule situations, some injury situations. We're also going to be bringing in on this show in future weeks a little bit of referee analysis too. We've got a referee expert, Joe Gibbs. He's going to be making a quick little appearance from time to time, talking about some referee angles that you need to be aware of for these upcoming games. I'm sure we're going to be talking about some of those illegal formation penalties and what we should be doing from a pivoting standpoint, changing some of our priors to help us make some money down the road. Speaking of making money, definitely make sure to utilize the code 77 show and you get 77% off all of our week one bets. I will have a couple bets for the game tonight, Philadelphia and Green Bay. That'll be up there later today. And if you want to get involved for the full season, 25% off everything that will end on Sunday. Your last chance to get 25% off. That code is 25 show. So 77 show, 77% off week one, 25 show, 25% off anything you want at the website. Thank you guys so much. I appreciated all your questions and your comments in the chat. Be sure that you're subscribed to YouTube so you can see all of the questions and ask your own in these upcoming episodes. Subscribe to us on all your podcast platforms as well, wherever you consume them. We're going to be here every Tuesday and Friday, 12 noon Eastern, live with you guys here. Thanks once again.